Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1407, and today's date is October 22nd, 2017, and the title of the episode is The IMF Lays Out the Global Financial Crash Scenario. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we've been talking about the housing bubble, not just here in the United States, but out in Canada, Australia, Europe, and even China. China does have a housing bubble problem. And again, all these countries had a housing bubble problem back in 2008. And what we need to understand is that they've built a lot of homes in China. And a lot of people have purchased homes. And their way of life has increased over time. Now, if you look at the Chinese household, 3/4 of the Chinese household, their assets are parked in real estate. So 3/4 of the Chinese household assets are parked in real estate, where in America, it's about 28% in the U.S. And Beijing knows that they're going to have a problem. They understand that there's a housing bubble. Even the Fed understands there's a housing bubble. The ECB understands the housing bubble. They all know what they've been doing. They've been pumping up the housing bubbles, and not just one bubble, but we have many other bubbles. And what they're starting to do is they're starting to purchase the real estate from individuals, or help out and pay off some of the real estate out in China. Because what is happening here is property sales in China, well, they dropped for the first time since March of 2015. And they're running into problems. The property sales by floor area fell by 1.5% in September from a year earlier, compared with 4.3% increase in August. Now, that marked the first annual decline since the start of 2015. The negative September sale numbers show that unequivocally the property boom has peaked right now, and we can see that cities and different areas within China, they are trying to stop what is about to happen. And this program is the first large-scale case of the government becoming a home buyer itself. Now, this reminds me of what the central banks have done with the bond market, with the stock market, where they're purchasing this stuff up to make sure that the economies continually move along here. But eventually what's going to happen is that these economies they're going to implode on themselves. And this is why when you look at the IMF's global report, and hidden almost all the way in the end of the chapter of the IMF's latest financial stability report, what we see is there is a discussion of a financial, or I should say global financial crash scenario. And they're talking about what they'll need to do and what will happen during this global financial, they call it a dislocation scenario, which is really a implosion of the economy. Because if they use the word crash or collapse, that just sounds a little too scary to everyone. So they use the word dislocation scenario. And what they're saying is that a lot of things are going to happen during this period of time. Credit is going to freeze up. Housing is going to come tumbling down. We're going to see the stock market completely collapse. We're going to see a decline in asset prices. We're going to see rise in volatility would lead to a global financial downturn. And they discuss that this is going to be a complete and utter disaster. And they go through it within their report, saying that this whole scenario is going to destroy the global economic system. And we know that it will, because they're talking about that how there's too much debt out there, how it can't be sustained, how countries are barely getting by, where people aren't working anymore. The whole thing is built up on bubbles. And they laid out this entire scenario on what they would have to do during this period of this global dislocation scenario, which is a collapse of the system. So what this tells me is they've been prepared and ready for this, and they've been working on their plans to adjust to this downturn of the global economy. And they know it's coming. They know because they've created it. They know that the central banks have created it through issuing debt, that their system can't be sustained over a period of time. And they know eventually what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to bring it down and restart it. And this is where we are right now. This is why they've been doing this. Now, out in Europe, we can see there's a referendum, which was just held in Catalonia. Now, other countries are getting on board. We see Italy, the two wealthiest northern regions of Lombardy and Veneto, They are voting on this Sunday, in referendums for greater autonomy from Rome. Now, they're looking at this saying, listen, Spain can do it. Well, then we can do it. Now, Lombardy, which includes Milan, Veneto, which houses the tourist powerhouse of Venice, are home to around a quarter of Italy's population and account for about 30% of Italy's economy. This is the Eurozone's third largest. Unlike Catalonia, the consultative votes are only the beginning of a process which could cover over time, lead to powers being devolved from Rome. Lombardy sends around 54 billion euros in taxes to Rome, then it gets back in public spending. And we can see that they're looking to have independence. Now, out in Catalonia, the Spanish Prime Minister is going to remove officials from the Catalan government, including the president. Now, it looks like they're going to invoke Article 155 of the Spanish Constitution, which abolishes Catalonia's autonomy and imposes direct rule over the region from Madrid. And during this statement, we see that Catalonia leaders, including the Catalan president, is failing to speak before the parliament in Madrid. And the whole thing is really starting to heat up, and everything is starting to move towards some type of civil war. Now, the question is, if Catalonia, or when Catalonia decides to separate itself from Spain, who is going to be in trouble here? Well, it looks like it's financial suicide for the Spanish economy, not for Catalonia. And right now what we're seeing is that the Catalan banks, the cash is being removed. Those banks that are trying to move out of the area, we see that people are running there, taking their cash out, which we mentioned before. And this can really evolve into riots. It could evolve into a civil war. And there are countries around the world looking to do the same exact thing. Now, out in North Korea, we understand there's a drill going on. The USS Ronald Reagan sailed down there. We have a lot of different ships and a lot of different military assets in the area holding this drill to provoke North Korea. Now, experts are out there and they're saying that the mountain that North Korea used for their nuclear tests appears to have suffered too much geological damage, and researchers are saying that the mountain's future is very questionable. They don't know if they can hold another nuclear test in this area. The mountain might collapse and, completely implode on itself. And that would be pretty darn bad, because they're saying it would let out radiation and the whole thing would be a complete and utter disaster. Now, once again, they're saying that North Korea has continually used this mountain for tests. And many times when they say there was an earthquake or there was a test, we know that Russia, China, Japan, and other countries around that area, they tested for radiation and they couldn't find any radiation after there was an earthquake. And that question, did they really have a test? Was it an earthquake? And again, there was no absolute proof that they were testing a nuclear weapon. But we can see that they are on track to develop a nuclear weapon, because they know that the cabal eventually would like to have regime change in their country, just like they had in all the other countries. We see that the IAEA, they are being pushed into inspecting Iran's military sites, and the IAEA is saying, listen, this is not in our jurisdiction. Russia is out there saying this is not in their jurisdiction to go into military sites, because if this was the case and they were actually saying that, yes, they must go into Iran's military sites to do inspections, then the IAEA would go into every single military site around the world and do inspections on each and every one of the countries that have nuclear weapon facilities or nuclear technology. And again, if they open this up, guess what? You're going to see them move into each one of these countries, and they would have to check out their military sites, which is never going to happen. And of course, you know why they want the IAEA to go in there. They're trying to find something. They're trying to find that magical nuclear weapon or the ballistic missile, which is not part of the P5+1 discussion. They're trying to find all of this information and use it. But once again, everything they've tried to do in the past has not worked. They're trying to do it in the future, trying to say that Iran is not abiding by the deal. But really, it always turns out to be the cabal, the United States, that always goes back on every single one of the deals. Tillerson is out there saying that the Iranian militias, they need to leave Iraq because we decided those militias are terrorist groups. So you are supporting terrorists. Well, just because the United States, the cabal, designated these militias as terrorist groups doesn't mean they're terrorists. I mean, think about it. The Islamic State is a created terrorist group by the United States and the coalition forces. Al-Qaeda is a created terrorist group by the United States. And shouldn't Iraq decide who is in their country and who's not in their country? That's exactly what should happen here. But again, what we're seeing is that the cabal wants full control of Iraq. They want full control of all the Middle Eastern nations, and they're trying to push Iran out of this area, because remember, Iraq and Iran, they've made a deal to run a gas pipeline through Iraq into Syria up into Europe, and once again the cabal doesn't want this to happen. We see the US-backed militias, they've seized a key oil field in East Syria. They're saying they captured it from the Islamic State. Basically, it was just handed over because the Islamic State is controlled by the United States. They're the paid mercenaries, and they made it look like, oh, we're fighting them, but really it was just a handoff saying, look, we have the oil field. And remember, the other oil field, the Syrian Democratic Forces handed it over to Russia and Syria, and I'm sure Syria is going to be asking for this back also. So what we're seeing here right now is that the Islamic State, their days are completely numbered in this area. We see that the cabal is still trying to push their agenda in the Middle Eastern countries, trying to push something with Iran, definitely push something with North Korea, but it is all not happening. And we see the IMF, they are out there with their doomsday document where they're expecting some type of global dislocation, and they're expecting the global financial economy to come down. And they've been making plans for this. They already have plans for this. They already know what they're doing. They've been moving their central bank systems out of the United States area, establishing a new central bank system out in China, along with Russia, the BRICS system. And I'm not saying this is a better system. I'm saying it's still controlled by the central bank system. And this is what they do. They hop from country to country. They have no allegiance to a country or group. They don't care where they're located. It makes no difference to them. They see that the United States is finished. Those people who are left in the Fed and left in government, well, they're abandoning them, saying, listen, your time is done. It's time to move on. And you need to remember, the central bank, all they care about is keeping control of the creation of currency. Doesn't matter if it's digital or paper. As long as they have control, they can control the world. And it doesn't matter where they're located, where they are. It makes no difference. And they've been spending the time over the many years moving everything. And if we've been tracking this, everything has been moved from the west to the east. The payment system, the exchange systems, the currency is now included with the SDR, the basket of SDRs. The yuan is in there. And we see they've been doing this for a very long time. We have China now and Russia working with Saudi Arabia, working with Qatar, working with Iran, working with Egypt, and everything is slowly moving over to that area because they understand that this is going to be their new base of operation. And it doesn't mean that things are going to be much better. It means that they're getting ready to reset the entire system, and they're ready to bring down the old system. And of course, they need some type of an event to cover this up, because with an event, they can cover everything up. After the event, and usually the event is a war, they can say, listen, now we can restart the system, and they profit from both sides by loaning money to all the different countries that are at war, because remember, they sit back and they watch the whole thing. After the war is over, everyone needs to rebuild their city, so they profit once again because everyone has to borrow to rebuild their cities, and the system starts from scratch, and they have another 40 years or so to put everyone into debt. This is how it works. And we see that they're prepared and ready. The IMF is prepared and ready. This system is about to come down. You need to be prepared and ready. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.